your mind.
Good evening and welcome to Open Your Mind Radio. It's Sunday the 28th of May 2017 and you have myself, Alan James.
Myself, Stephen George. Good evening.
I was nearly going off script there. My God, the
Stick on the script. Stick to the script.
I will stick to the script, no problem at all. Right, okay, we have a packed show. We've loads of information to talk about, lots of things to talk about, and we have a great guest. Our guest is a chap called Neil Saunders, who's a mind control researcher. And the last time we had Neil on the show was January 2013, so that's 5 years ago, and I'm sure there's an awful lot that has gone down in Neil's life, and he's done an awful lot of research, and I know he has a book coming out soon as well, so we look forward to talking to Neil in a few minutes. But before we do that, let's find out what the communication channels are.
Okay, communication channels this evening are...
The communication channels are email info@oymireland.com, by phone 046 927 1212, and you can also contact us direct through the OYM chat room.
Thank you, Mary. Yes, the phone number is 046 927 1212. If you want to call in from outside the Republic of Ireland, it's 00353 469 271212. We also have the chat rooms as well. If you want to ask questions for a guest this evening, you'll find our own chat room on OYMradio.com. You will see the links in the navigation bar to the chat room. You will see the link to the anti-social media Facebook. Also to Twitter and the email as well, and the YouTube channel, not forgetting the YouTube channel. And we also have a link there for the TuneIn Radio app. That's a free app for your smartphone or your iPhone, and stick it on. You can check us out 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So a big hi to everyone logged into the chat room, and also peoplesinternetradio.com. We're on the chat room over there as well, monitoring both of the rooms for your questions this evening. Alan.
Brilliant stuff. Right, Steve, you want to kick us off first?
Yes, I'm going to kick us off with this one. The Office of the Treasury for the Government of the US of A hereby introduces the newest versions of the continental dollar based on this international public notice published on March the 20th, 2017. We do have a link. The link is in the chat room there. If you didn't catch it, I will repost it again. It says the Department of Social Protection says claimants who do not comply with the stringent registration process for issuing cards, that's ID cards, may have their payments, including child benefit or free travel, suspended. Privacy campaigners have expressed concern that a plan by the government to make all citizens applying for a passport and a driving licence first obtain a state-issued public services card, and this represents the introduction of a national ID card by stealth. Well, that's quite interesting because I don't have a passport at this moment in time, and we spoke before about a worldwide passport, didn't we?
Yeah.
I'm going to have to look into that again.
There was a chap who did it. I don't know whether he's still alive, but you can go on the internet, and Carol Roslin talked about the worldwide passport that you can get, and it's accepted in a number of countries. The article there, the top article there about the continental dollar. That's I just put we'll just say apparently because we don't know. But the link is there in the chat room. Steve will probably copy it out again and copy it over to the People's Internet Radio. And of course, we all know about the social protection. If you want to start getting social, making claims in social services for the for your money and stuff like that, they're beginning to start using the ID cards and forcing people to have ID cards. And we had a lady taking on the social services over that. And I did an affidavit for it as well. So they still haven't said that it's mandatory. They won't admit that it's mandatory. So that case is ongoing at the moment. Right, okay, the next thing is independent.ie. As they reported that attempts to access porn sites were logged in Leinster House in just 1 month. Almost 400 attempts to access pornographic or explicit websites were made on the Oireachtas computers in just 24 days, independent.ie can reveal. Data released under Freedom of Information laws show that 970 attempts were made by staff of the Houses of the Oireachtas Commission, journalists, visitors and contractors to access blocked websites from December 5th, 2016. The busiest day for attempts to link to pornographic or profane sites was December 21st. That's interesting. On that day, there were 44 attempts to link to sites that were considered pornographic and 5 attempts to link to sites blocked for hosting nudity. Some attempts were categorised as a bid to connect to sites listed as extreme, while others were regarded as profane. So, you know, while our politicians do nothing, as we know they do nothing to help the people of Ireland, they're too busy in Leinster House sitting down on the computers trying to access porn sites.
We need to send them over a link to our website.
Yes.
They'll get much better information over there.
We have to try and educate them, you know. Steve?
Yes, anyone in Ireland will be only too well aware of the name Shawnee Fitzpatrick. If you're not, do look it up. But RTE.ie are reporting after the longest running criminal trial in the history of the state, Sean Fitzpatrick, aka Shawnee Fitzpatrick, has been acquitted of all charges. This morning, the 126th day of proceedings, presiding judge John Aylmer said he will direct the jury to acquit the 68-year-old on all counts, and that while Stephen Manning is illegally jailed by a corrupt judicial system.
Isn't that terrible?
You know what? They may as well just rename Ireland, and you know, I don't know what the Irish will be for white collar crime. You know,
well, it's Banana.
Welcome here,
Banana Republic. I know Shawnee Fitzpatrick must have some black notebook, really thick, and he said, "Listen, lads, if you don't acquit me, guess what? This notebook is going to fall into the wrong hands."
You know it.
Yeah, of course it is. And then Stephen Manning, who's trying to stand up for and do the right thing, gets jailed by a judge for 2 months. I mean, seriously, and people just don't see this going on. It's unreal. It's getting worse, really is. How's your week anyway? Yeah,
well, I mean, my week is kind of not too much. Put it this way: if this was school, I'd be in trouble because I've no homework done.
Okay.
So I'll have to get detention. But yeah, I mean, when you see the likes of that Shawnee Fitzpatrick getting away with it, seemingly some documents that were kind of required for this case were accidentally shredded. That's what some of the information is saying. There was actually a TD on the Oireachtas report. I think he was a Sinn Féin TD, and he started off kind of discussing the case, and then it went into a full blown rant. And he didn't speak any lies. He spoke the truth, and it's just a classic case of the white collar crime. It is brushed under the carpet here, and you do get away with it. There was a woman seemingly as well. She's on obviously rent allowance, and her welfare checks or the rent allowance checks were going to her landlord, and she was lifting them from the landlord's home, and she was cashing the checks, and she was using them herself, I believe, to A, put food on the table, and B, to try and make a home out of the rented accommodation belonged to the landlord because it wasn't up to scratch. Now, I know there's two sides to every story, but I mean, when you see the likes of that, she done that, cashed a couple of checks that she shouldn't have, and I think she got 3 months in prison. I believe that was the term. I think it was 3 months anyway. But the likes of Shawnee Fingers, scot-free.
Yeah. Walks
away scot-free. Free to do it again. But like Alan says, there's obviously the difference between them and us is if we go down, well, you were caught doing something and you do the crime, you do the time. When they do the crime, they make sure that they have a network, and they have as many people involved. So it's a case of, well, if I go down, I'll take the whole lot of you with me.
Well, what we have, Steve, I think, in Ireland is we have a 2-tier judicial system.
Yes.
And the first tier is obviously for the 1%, and the other tier is for the 99%.
Oh, that's correct. That's it.
Yeah.
That's it in a nutshell.
Mm.
Yeah, so anyone, if there's anyone listening here who wants to commit some white-collar crime, do it in Ireland. Guaranteed to get away scot-free. Mm. And what else have we got for you? We have noisy neighbours. I just want to mention noisy neighbours because myself and my wife were kept awake last night until the wee small hours of the morning. And, if anyone has any ideas how to deal with this, I would love to know them. When someone just kind of, they throw a party, they have a party, and it's boom, 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 loud music at 1:30 in the morning. Now, I fell asleep at that time, obviously due to exhaustion, but my wife, I think she said it went on till maybe 3-4 o'clock in and around that time. And I was just kind of toying with the idea, do I kind of, well, we've knocked around to these people. Several of the neighbours have actually knocked on the door and says, could you keep it down? And they're told in no uncertain terms where to go and how to get there, if you know what I mean. So I'm wondering, like, has anyone ideas what we can do? I mean, I was thinking maybe draw up a letter, kind of make it sound like very business and legalese, stick a harp on a brown envelope and just stick it through the door. But again, I don't know if that would work. I have to say, it's not a regular occurrence, but when it does happen, it's really annoying. Now, I mean, if there's a party going on and someone says, look, we're having a party,
Yeah.
it might get a little bit noisy. You have the information, so you can decide, okay, well, I know what's going to happen. I'll make arrangements. Either I'll stay home and I'll barricade the windows, I'll buy some earplugs, or I'll maybe go down to the parents and stay the night, or something like that. But when it just happens, and I mean, we were up early this morning, and there's a lot of people around our estate with young children. I mean, infants, really, really small children. So if anyone has any ideas of different ways we could deal with it, it doesn't matter how extreme, but be kind. Just send us an email, info@oymradio.com.
Can I just add to that?
Yes.
As you're talking about noisy neighbours, I was kept awake on Friday night by somebody who had a dog barking at 1 o'clock at night, constantly.
That's not acceptable.
I know, but who? I'd love to know who. What way does these people's brains work where they have a dog barking at 1 o'clock in the morning and they think that's acceptable? They think that's okay.
Clearly, they don't hear the dog. They've obviously filtered out. But I mean, there's probably an animal rights thing in there somewhere, whereby
there is. Basically, I inquired about this before. If the dog is being harmed in any way, they'll come, but otherwise they won't get involved.
Oh, okay. So the dog can bark all night.
Yeah, basically.
Okay, that's fair enough. All right, thanks for that. The last thing on my list is chemtrails. I just noticed the other morning as I left for work, there were no chemtrails, and I drove to work with a smile on my face and a song in my heart, all the way in, and went into work, and it was a beautiful day, very warm, because anyone who's listening outside of Ireland will know it's kind of our summertime over here, so the rain is nice and warm. But I did notice by lunchtime the sky, you couldn't even see the sky, it was just this milky white, and you could see the chemtrails going over. Again, something that we talked about a long time ago was chembusters. We never actually got around to building them or testing them. I'm just wondering if anyone has any experience with the chembusters. Again, either stick something up on the chat there or just drop it in an email to info@oymradio.com. We'd love to hear. I think, this could be the year when we maybe build a couple and see what we can do. Anyway, there we go. My week in a nutshell. How's yours?
Yeah, okay. Well, we bring Neil in a few minutes' time. Just go through a couple of things here. Just things, observations. One of the things I seen on Facebook, posted up by Max Egan. He was talking about the Manchester attack, and he posted on his Facebook that the Manchester attack was carried out by a man, 22 years of age, at 22:33 p.m. on the night of May the 22nd at longitude -2.2, killing 22 people. Does anyone seriously think some Muslim randomly could have actually planned all this? Hey, that's open to, analysing, the dates and stuff like that. It's open to discussion. And we will talk to Neil about the Manchester attack and what his take is on there. But that's Max Egan. He just posted it up there. I just found that quite interesting. And somebody else posted an image up. I don't know, have you seen it, Steve, where all the dates are 22, 22, 22.
No, I haven't seen it.
Have you not seen that?
No.
There's an image going around where all these attacks and all these things that have happened, everything was on the 22nd. Very uncanny. Right. The other thing is, in the Irish Examiner, pregnant woman jailed for stealing €70 of perfume. A pregnant woman has been jailed for stealing a bottle of perfume in a case in which a warrant was issued to ensure the key witness came to court. Alana Rosta, aged 28, was found guilty of stealing the bottle of Flower Bomb perfume from Crowley's Pharmacy in Drumaleague, West Cork on October 6th. She was living at 2 Collins apartments at the time. Now, So this woman gets jailed for stealing €70 a perfume, and Shani Fitzpatrick gets off for screwing the country.
You know what? I think no matter what happens from now on, I think everyone, the rhetorical thing is going to be, right, he or she was done for this. Shawnee Fitzpatrick gets off scot-free.
Yeah. Yeah, it really is. Sense. It's a banana republic. And one thing left before we get Neil in. Myself and Steve had a Skype call last night with a lady called Dr. Ariel Policano. And she was showing us and demoing some advanced tech called the Genius. Some of you might have heard of it. I don't know whether you have. But it does what the Spooky 2 does and more. And it's an app that you can download on your tablet, your iPhone and smartphone. And you can scan your body and it sends healing to it via quantum entanglement, which is the same as the Spooky 2, but with a difference. Now, we are hoping to have access to this software so we can test it and give you feedback on whether it works or not. But Dr. Policano has had great results with it, so we'll keep you posted. This is like the Star Trek tricorder, really, and you have it on a tablet and you scan your body, and through a version of quantum entanglement, that's how it works. Now, the guy who designed it was the guy who designed the original software, which is the Skio, which cost 22 grand. So this is a portable version of like the Skio, and it's a lot cheaper. Yes, we know it's €997 or dollars.
Yes.
That's what they're selling it for, and it is very expensive, I know. But we suggested to them that, the product looks great, but the price is just unbelievable. But look, we're going to try and get our hands on it anyway, and we're going to give it a test and see how we get on. And she did a quick test on me and Steve last night, and it looked great, didn't it, Steve?
Yeah.
The software,
it does. I have to say, it does look like it's very involved. It has a lot of bells and whistles. There does seem to be a lot to it. Now, I'll get. You can actually download a free 2-week trial. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get that link, post it in both of the chat rooms. If anyone has a smartphone, or I think it works on smartphones, iPads, tablets. I think it works on all those devices. Download it, give it 2 weeks trial, and just see how you get on. There is actually a demonstration video how to use the software as well. So if you do download it and you do try it out, please keep a diary, and at some stage fire us off an email and just let us know what you think of it, how you get on, because when it comes to relying on people for testimonials, well, no better people than your good selves. Yeah, so it's called The Genius, and if you go on YouTube and type in Dr. Ariel Policano, you'll actually see some things about The Genius there. And you can also, and we're going to get Dr. Policano and Ryan Williams, who's the inventor, on the show, but we're going to try and get the software first, test it, see what it's like, and then get them on and talk to them about it. So it'll be interesting. It's going to be interesting. The software looks very impressive, and it does spiritual stuff as well. It tells you whether you're being psychically attacked, or whether your auras need changing, your chakras need changing, or fixing. So it does the whole remit. It's phenomenal. We'll just have to test it on people and see how we get on. You know me and Steve, we like kicking the tires, and if we feel it doesn't do the job, then we'll tell you it doesn't do the job. It's that simple. Right, okay, we're going to get a guest on. Our guest is Neil Saunders, who's a mind control researcher. Neil, the last time Neil was on the show was January 2013, and as usual, we have a great chat with Neil, getting into the psychology of the mind control and what's gone on. And I'm sure over the last 5 years, things have ramped up since then. So we'll find out a bit more. Good evening, Neil. How are you?
Hiya. Very well, thank you. How are you guys?
Brilliant. Thanks for coming on. Much appreciated.
No. Thank you for asking me.
As you said, 5 years down the line, Neil, that's the last time you were on, and I'm sure an awful lot has happened with yourself. But I'll tell you what, I'm going to get Steve to read out your bio, and then we'll get cracking in and we'll start talking about stuff. Steve?
Yes, Neil holds an MA in Film Studies. He studied Psychology and Media Production for his BA Honours and is a qualified hypnotherapist. Neil is considered an expert on the subject of mind control and has been studying the history of this dark art and its application by military and government intelligence agencies across the globe for many years. Neil also has appeared on several TV shows and made numerous radio appearances in Europe and the USA, and is the author of Your Thoughts Are Not Your Own, volumes 1 and 2.
Now, Neil, I know you've been on Rich Planet as well. on TV, on the Skybox, and as I say, 5 years down the line. So what's been happening in your life? What have you been doing?
What, over 5 years?
Well, we only have about an hour and a half.
You know, nothing.
No, just hanging out, really. Man. Yeah.
Well, I like work-wise, I've literally just finished a book which I've been working on for quite a time, which is on the Manson murders, and so hopefully that'll be coming out quite soon. It's basically just a re-examination of it and looking at the various different theories, trying to figure out what's the most plausible and try and get to the bottom of what actually happened, basically. And that's just a bit of a pet project of mine. I've always been interested in Manson, and I just sort of decided to do it to see if I could do it, really, to be quite honest. I did a presentation that's been floating about that called Welcome to Sell, which is basically, it's like a fake sales seminar. I do a bit of acting. It's the actual acting, you know. I play like an evil salesman. It's kind of loosely based on the Alec Baldwin character in Glenn Ross. I just basically play an arsehole. And it's like I've turned up at the wrong seminar. I'm there to teach you how to be a better salesman and how to trick the public and how the sort of advertising would use certain tricks and manipulations in order to, you know, generate more revenue.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that's what I've been up to. I've been looking at a lot of sort of internet stuff, and I'm quite interested in the use of drugs, basically. That sounds dodgy. I think that they are they're used in a controlling sense. I think they have been since at least the 1960s, and I think that they're utilised in that way still. I think you can use them in a number of ways to criminalise people, to neutralise people, in order to get people involved in the wrong crowd, or to blacken their name, so to speak. And I think it's decidedly interesting the way that organised crime sort of interlinks with this, and how it always seems to connect back to sort of government agencies, basically.
Right, okay. And obviously 5 years down the line, you're obviously seeing an awful lot of things going on. Do you feel that things have ramped up and that we're on the road to the totalitarian tiptoe, that things have ramped up since the last time we spoke to you?
Yes, I think what's really strange is that a lot of people are falling for exactly the same propaganda. It's essentially, you know, let's take Al Qaeda and we'll just put ISIS in front of it. That people fell for years ago, and we just got about round to a position whereby everyone was new about, you know, funding of jihadis and Salafist and Wahhabist states, and how this was, you know, effective for our foreign policy, causing a strategy of tension in order to basically, you know, utilise the most revenue that we can get out of the oil states, and how we'd been funding these terror groups since, again, at least the 50s, and people understood that it's a complicated influence where basically, you know, we set up these terror groups, and in the past have used terror groups against our own populations in order for our own nefarious ends. I think it's very disappointing that quite a lot of people within the alt media have just forgotten all this, because it was only it's like 5 years ago, and have gone straight down the alt-right line, or straight down the sort of mainstream line, and promoting the concept that there is actually, you know, only a legitimate threat from Muslim terrorists, which seems to be swallowing the propaganda hook, line and sinker, to be quite honest.
Well, maybe people are just forgetting history. So isn't there a saying out there that the people that forget history are likely to repeat it if you forget it?
Absolutely.
And I think that's what it is. I think people aren't looking back at history to see what's done, and things are just repeating. They're using the same formula again, because the whole, even the Hegelian dialectic, the problem, reaction, solution, I mean, they love using that because it works all the bloody time.
Absolutely. I mean, I think a lot of this is swayed by certain popular mouthpieces of the alternative media taking a distinct right turn in their political and ideological output. And I think, I don't understand why I have suspicions why a lot of people have jumped on certain bandwagons and such, but yeah, it's very strange. So in that sense, yes, I think there's a lot more, again, agent provocateurs out there. I think there's a lot of chaos creation that's going on. And I think a lot of people don't realise that they're falling for this chaos creation because of the medium in which it comes across, which is 9 times out of 10 some sort of social media forum or group or interaction whereby people believe that they're getting information in an organic sense from like-minded individuals who they trust. And you know, that really has absolutely no bearing on the quality of the information at all, if we're being brutally honest.
Yeah, totally. Well, we had a quick chat before we went live, and we talked about we were told that 75% of the alt media are controlled, and then obviously the internet, you can't rely on the information on the internet because you just don't know. Do you want to expand on that and what you've come across?
Well, I mean, the internet is basically, it's just like a library. It's like anything. Any source needs to be checked. It needs to be checked and it needs to be given context. Otherwise, it's basically just a statement. It's not a piece of evidence. It's just a statement. It's possibly even just an opinion. And I think what's strange is that basically, because of the nature of the internet, people think that they've come to information by sourcing it, by finding it from what they would consider a reliable source, from researching it. And often that's not really the case. You've really just sort of repeated this information in the same way that you repeat it from any media source, be that a mainstream newspaper or a mainstream news article or just a man on a street. And for whatever reason, the necessity, and I think this is down a lot of the time to the speed, the sort of the nature of online interaction is basically very immediate. You need to have a response. You need to be up to date. You need to be basically abreast of all the issues that you need to be in the minutiae involved with them in order to keep up with the constant flow of information that's rolling out and rolling out and rolling out. And what's bad about that is essentially a lot of the time people are forced into snap judgments, snap committals of opinions, and drive themselves into a position that is very difficult to go back on. You within seconds of an incident happening, you've got people basically saying, "Oh, this is exactly what happened. I know it's this," and blah 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 blah. And at that point, you've had it because you're no longer researching. At that point, you're trying to prove a case, and often you're doing that before the dust has even settled. You've basically attached yourself to a position, and it's sometimes a very embarrassing climb down to say, "Oh no, actually I was wrong." I don't actually blame people for this. Again, I think it's the medium. I think that this is bound to happen when you understand that the concept of how social media works and how it can affect you in a sort of drug-type gambling sense. You get a dopamine response from being congratulated or from people reading something that you've put or putting a like or giving you any sort of acknowledgement. It sounds silly, but it's actually incredibly effective. This is why people are on their phones 24/7, because basically they're getting this constant drug-seeking response. It's there's all sorts of actually sort of genuine psychological sort of papers and theories written about this, the concept of fear of missing out, the concept of depressed narcissism, the concept of just narcissistic tendencies in general that are caused by being on social media. And again, I think that one of the main problems of this is, again, it forces people into factions. People understand, the people in control of society understand that basically that's how you're hardwired. You're hardwired to fall into groups of like-minded individuals and to defend that really, really passionately, not actually be open to another opinion, particularly if that threatens your inclusion in the group that you get. And what's really strange about social media is that the more involved in social media you are, the less socially active you actually are. You're not leaving the house, you're not interacting with people on a face-to-face level, you're interacting in a virtual computer electronic sense. So therefore, allegiance to these groups, these friendships that you form online, they're even more powerful, they're even more important, and you're even less likely to basically go, "Hang on guys, isn't this stupid?" Because basically you don't want to be the person that goes against your friends. Like this is again, it's a type of de-individuation. It's really the same concept as why people get involved in riots and looting and that type of thing. Get swept up with the crowd. it's a hypnotic process by which you basically lose your sense of self. But by giving over your sense of self, you feel incredibly powerful. You get this, because you're essentially become one of a far larger collective. You've got the whole group behind you. And this allows you to be far more expressive in a sense. You can get away with stuff that you would never get away with, on your own. Tie that in with the anonymity that's available on the internet, and all of a sudden, not only are you getting sort of very, very sort of like hard line opinions, like very, very completely intransient opinions that you cannot change or will not even be addressed as being potentially wrong, but you've also got anger spitting out and the facility to do that and get away with it.
Yeah. The one thing I'd be concerned about, as you say, is the Chinese whispers and the embellishment of stories. When I did a course in 1986, and part of the course was the study of psychology, and the psychologist got 10 people to stand side by side, and then he whispered something in the ear of the person on one end. And obviously, some people probably done this before. And then by the time we got to the 10th person down the other end, the story was completely different, or near enough, completely different. Because the psychology is that some people like to embellish stories. They like to put in the extra bit to make it more dynamic and funky and, interesting and relevant. And so that's why when you get people who, and this is why police like to interview as many people as they can regarding eyewitnesses, because what they do is, if a car, breaks a light and they interview witnesses and has an accident, they look for the common denominator. So they'll say, right, okay, so everybody will say, some of you might say it was a red car, blue car, whatever, but they'll say, okay, well, it was a car, not a truck. So they look for the common denominators in the witness statements, because they obviously know that people embellish things to make it more dynamic or make it more interesting. So this is what we have to be concerned about with the internet and the stories out there and the people who write them. If they say, well, we have an eyewitness, well, okay, that's brilliant, but what kind of person is that eyewitness? Will they tell you the story as they see it, or will they have in their mind, have they embellished it before they give it to the newspapers?
Mm-hmm. And also, what did they take away from that that's important? It was a red car, it was a blue car, it was a Subaru. Like, to somebody, that's really important that it's a Subaru, because to them, that informs some detail that's very important. They get something from that. Oh, if it was a Subaru, then they must be a fast driver, blah, blah, etc., or whatever. They must have a bit of money. There is something that is important to them. That's not really a reflection of the story necessarily. It's really more of a reflection of the person that's reading the story and what they take from it. And so you're absolutely correct. There are all these things. And that's even before you go into intentionally fake stories, clickbait, badly researched stuff, and as you say, just sensationalized headlines just to draw people in. And then people, all they do is repeat the headlines. Go, oh yeah, this is the case. Because, well, no, that's not actually what happened at all, is it really, to be quite honest? Like, there's been one recently with the Seth Rich thing. Oh, Fox News have proved that Seth Rich was the WikiLeaks thing. No, he didn't. No, they didn't at all. That's what the headline said. But what actually happened was some guy that used to work for Seth Rich's parents went against their wishes on Fox News, told a story, recanted a story, was promptly threatened to be sued by the parents, and Fox News retracted the story. There was never any evidence. It was just one guy's say-so, which collapsed under the lightest of questioning. Yeah. But the headline... Sorry?
No, go ahead.
But the headline had already existed, and so that's been passed around. And we've got another guy, this Kim.com, who's basically come out and said something very, very similar. This guy is a proven liar. So, take it with a grain of salt until you've seen some actual proper tangible evidence.
Yeah, totally. And obviously with the change now, we had, everybody was called conspiracy theorists, and that was the they got a laugh at, calling people conspiracy theorists. But now that a lot of the conspiracy theories, which in itself was CIA mind control, just to put people off the scent, I believe, in the 60s. now that it's kind of accepted because a lot of the things that were said have become true, now the buzzword is fake news. Steve, do you want to jump in there?
I was just thinking the same thing. I mean, because a lot of people obviously are starting to realise now that guy down the road who we all call the conspiracy theory, well, stuff that's happening now, he said that years ago, and now it's happening. Oh no. So yeah, fake news. It's all fake news now.
Yeah.
That's an interesting thing, the fake news, because where it came from, the first instance of people talking about fake news was actually outlets like Breitbart, okay, which were basically saying Hillary Clinton's got a brain tumor, Hillary Clinton's got that disease from that cannibals get, Hillary Clinton's dying of a stroke, blah, 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 blah. That was the initial raft of what was determined to be fake news. And what's interesting is that people like Alex Jones picked up on stories that were initially put out by Breitbart, and then he was accused of spouting fake news. Then later, the Trump administration started accusing some of the stories about Hillary Clinton of being fake news and used this buzz term. And when he came into power, he basically used the term fake news as an instant parry to anything that he didn't like, anything that was sort of negative about him in the press. And it was actually seized upon by his supporters. So that was, even at the time that was happening, I thought, this is quite clever. This is very shrewd, because what it's actually doing is it's putting him in a position whereby he's untouchable by his supporters, like, because basically you have this easy dismissal of anything that could possibly be deemed as negative against him. I did at the time think, that's the tactics of a dictator. But, I kept that to myself. But it is interesting the way that this new thing is being bandied about. But it's interesting as to how it's been so successful, because basically it's bandied around by all sorts of people within all sorts of spheres, and I think it's the overuse of the term that's actually made it more powerful. I think that the utilising of it during the Trump campaign by both sides of the mainstream at one point, and then essentially by Trump supporters who were deemed as still part of the alternative media, and then basically as a response to some of the stories that came out there from the media to sort of quash this, it's very, very clever. And I can't help but think that this was all planned a long time ago, to be quite honest. Exactly like, as you were saying, the way that they utilised the phrase conspiracy theorists off the back of the Warren Commission to, basically stop people investigating the JFK assassination. And it's amazing. But if that's right, and basically that was the actual tracking of the utilisation, if that means that basically all those people that we've mentioned and all those newspapers and stuff were to a degree involved in that plot. Yeah, and the media, as we know, is all controlled, if anything more than ever, globally, and they will do what they need to do, I suppose. It's just amazing, and even with the amount of corruption, I mean, the few articles that we read out now early in the show about Shawnee Fitzpatrick, who was the chairman or CEO of Anglo-Irish, which basically destroyed Ireland in 2008 when the crash happened. And he's been acquitted. But yet, a lady who's robs a €70 perfume bottle gets jailed. I mean... Absolutely, yeah. But it's because it's slavery, isn't it, a lot of the time? I mean, obviously, you were absolutely right. There's one rule for them and another rule for us, which you can show innumerable times. I mean, look at Lord Janner before he died. Do you know what I mean? Like, that was absolutely outrageous. He's very clearly a paedophile. Yeah. Very clearly a cover-up. Wait until he dies, and then basically pay lip service. It's outrageous. It's because essentially the system's not there to punish everybody equally. Another very real thing is that essentially slavery, modern day slavery, is the prison system. This is especially in America, but it's certainly true to everywhere. Like, it's a way of getting people mechanized into a way that's actually profitable for the prison system. Like, I mean, certainly in America, they've got them building weapons systems. Like, they're sort of like, they're doing soldering on missiles and stuff like that for Lockheed Martin and such like that. So you've got this strange scenario where, so they're over in Afghanistan, and somehow all this heroin is getting over from Afghanistan all the way back to America. And some guy is selling this, to make ends meet or whatever, gets picked up selling this, goes to prison, starts making missiles which will be used to be launched over in Afghanistan. And he's doing that for free, or next to free, basically. I mean, it's the very good documentary 13, which discusses the 13th Amendment in America, which essentially means that prisoners can be used for slaves. And they are. And once you sort of realise that, and you realise the other financial kickbacks that are available in the prison system, and the other benefits socially that you can have from a seemingly strong police state and deterrent and that sort of thing, then it starts to sort of weigh on your opinion of whether people are really given a fair shot, or whether, there is an incentive to get a lot of people into prison.
Well, what I've heard on the American prison system is that they run it like a corporate business, and they need a certain amount of prisoners in there to actually get their money. So what they're doing is they're bringing out new laws, over more and more laws coming out, and people break the laws, and then the people will get incarcerated, and that guarantees them a good turnover of new people going into the prison system to actually work for them, for their corporate masters. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. There's all sorts of ludicrous things that go on. Like, what was it? There was one prison in Arizona. Like, they were lobbying for sort of harsher. Basically, they're lobbying for everything that they do is lobbying for laws in order that on the face of it, that's good. It's social critique, or it's social management. We want to get these drug dealers harsher sentences. We want to get harsher sentences for illegal immigration and that sort of thing. But actually, all you're doing is you're building the prison population in order to provide a slave labour workforce for this corporation. So you're absolutely correct. They are completely run like a prison, and you get sort of it gets even sort of dodgy in America when you sort of like look at drug enforcement agencies and that type of things. A lot of the time they're not financed in normal patterns. They're financed by seizures, which basically means that if you could prove that something belongs to somebody that's involved in the transaction of drugs, you can seize it, which opens up all sorts of cans of worms about, potential planning of evidence, and again, the incentive to actually be corrupt in order to finance their department in this sort of self-serving circular system. And, don't think this doesn't go on in England as well. There's all sorts of crazy there's a lot of rumours about the different police departments in England, like, selling drugs and being connected to criminal gangs and that type of thing. And
it's the same over here, Neil. We have over here. It's been exposed over here that it's been going on with the police force over here. So it seems to be obviously global. But I want to touch base with you on the Manchester attack and what's been going on over here, because there's, as I say, I read out there, Max Egan, he posted up on his Facebook, he said, the Manchester attack was carried out by a man, 22 years of age, at 22:33 p.m. on the night of May the 22nd, at longitude -2.2, killing 22 people. Does anyone seriously think some Muslim randomly could have actually planned all this? What do you think of that?
I'm not really into numerology. I spoke to a friend who's quite into maths, and he said that actually there's only 31 potential days. If you looked at any date, you could find connections at that point. The other thing that I find about it is that I don't know what the significance of 22 would be. If it was 11 or 13 or 9, something like that, I could go, okay, I could see that. But as far as I'm aware, 22 doesn't have that much of significance. That may well just be my ignorance. And it may well be a case, but I don't know, and that's not really my particular area. So again, perhaps I'm not qualified to talk about that.
There is a significance on the 22nd. It's got to do with, I think, it's some sacrificing or ritual, ritualistic.
I beg pardon?
I think it's got to do with sacrifice or ritualistic, got to do with satanic.
Well,
Satanism.
If that's the case, then that perhaps lends more credence to it. I mean, a lot of the problem with some of that is that basically the point of doing on the date is that it's a commemorative date. For example, they did this bombing was on the same day as the Lee Rigby, so that removes, some of the things. Again, it's not really my area. As regards the bombing, though, lots of things around it trouble me. I don't know why. Within hours, before they could really confidently have done a proper investigation, American intelligence is announcing who did it, why they did it, and how they did it. Which I don't understand. I don't understand why it would be a suicide bombing at that particular type of event, because I don't see, you could just leave a bag there. I don't know why they would release all that information damning the guy in the press before, that's trying a guy without a trial, isn't it? It's trying a person by public media, which is not on. And it seems to tie in with all these sorts of things. His father was connected to the IGF, terrorist organisations that MI6 funded to assassinate Gaddafi in the I forget, was it the 80s or the 90s he was involved in it. But again, terrorist organisations that we've funded, that we've trained, that we've utilised for other purposes, and it just so happens that this guy who apparently has been on MI5's radar, and there's been however many opportunities to get him. That's not a mistake. That's purposeful if it's true. And basically, you say all that comes out of this is a clamour for more money for the security services, a clamour for more money for the police, a clamour for more police on the streets, and I think that is very, very suspicious.
Well, it's a justification for the services. It's like
exactly.
It's like if we didn't have computer viruses, we wouldn't need computer virus software, and they wouldn't sell any. So I know from an IT point of view that there was rumours, and quite good rumours, that the antivirus companies were actually producing the viruses, and they'd say, come out and
I
say,
think John McCaffrey did it, did he not? I think he's basically boasted about it.
Yeah,
I'm sure.
Of course.
I may be wrong about that, but yeah, I don't doubt it. I mean, it's like the old rat catcher trick of leaving one rat there so that you'll get repeat business in a few weeks.
Yeah.
Of course you do. Like, yes, and this is the dynamic, or this is the world that we live in. Again, we've been funding these jihadi groups for whatever purpose and utilising them in various ways for years, ever since probably prior to the overthrow of Mossadegh, and we utilise murder in order to manipulate world situation. There was an incredibly quickly to tie him back to Libya and to tie him back to Syria, and ISIS have claimed this. Oh, have they? Like, you know what? Like, come on, they're the Jurgen Klinsmann of terrorist organisations. Like, I could phone up and claim it.
Well,
it doesn't mean I actually did it. Like, come on, it's Walter Mitty-ish sometimes.
Neil, that's kind of like going back to the days when they say a bomb went off, the IRA claimed responsibility. How do you know it was the IRA? They used a code word.
Yeah,
a recognised code word.
But it's like if somebody went in and stole something from the shop, would you go, it's me, I stole it, it was me, I stole it, to the shopkeeper? Or you go in and something, just that instant where everybody's admitting, I did it. Why would you want to go and admit that you did it?
Again, it's because it serves a narrative. Like, I struggle to find exactly what the point of terrorism is to create terror to advance a political, ideological view. Usually you have demands and such like that. I find it difficult to believe that basically their mission is just to destroy the Western world, because it's not a realistic mission. Like, is it? Like, do you know what I mean? I understood other terrorist organisations' motivation, or supposed motivation, because, they have a manifesto or whatever. It's very sketchy, this. It just seems to tie into creating chaos. And again, it's complicated because I'm under no illusion as well that basically there are real people who have joined ISIS and stuff like that think they're joining an organisation, and there are people that are in it that are completely dedicated towards the cause that they believe in. and there are also just lone nutcases that basically, in the same way as some idiot in Arkansas ties a red rag on his head, shoots a load of people and goes, "Oh yeah, I'm a blood." He's not a blood, right? But he killed you in exactly the same way as a blood. You get sort of copycat type people who feel that they will get some sort of grandiosity by attaching themselves to a cause that's larger than themselves. And so it's very, very complicated. So, knowing exactly what has happened is quite difficult to know. There was a theory that's been advanced that essentially it could be a very small sort of warning to Jeremy Corbyn that basically, this is what will happen if you don't fall in line. And then bizarrely, Jeremy Corbyn comes out and basically starts talking about increased money for the police, make sure they can do their job, troops on the street, do anything that is required to protect the public, blah, 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 blah. Seemingly, a lot of people would say, well, of course he's got to say that, It's,
Okay,
no one's ever going to examine these very, very complicated issues about, counterterrorism, espionage, utilization of groups, how they exist in the first place. No. All we're going to do is basically we're going to spit this narrative of it's Islam and Islamic terrorists, and we need to basically put more money into protecting ourselves.
Well, that's easy for some people because people don't like taking the time or the energy to go and do the research. So it's easy for people just to read the newspaper and then spit out what the newspaper says because it saves them the time and energy to do it. Now, you said about the chaos. Well, isn't it on the dollar bill, order out of chaos in Latin? Isn't that what they want at the end of the day, order out of chaos? Because the other thing is, I would say, and I'm being devil's advocate here, right? When a wedding party of 50 people in Iraq are blown up, nobody bats an eyelid and they say, oh, the collateral damage, or there was one member of ISIS in the wedding party, so we decided to kill the 50 people because there was one member there. Nobody seems to care. But
no, and it doesn't make what happened in Manchester any less horrible.
No.
But you're absolutely correct that basically it's the manipulation of people's feelings, and there's a certain disconnect from that that shows the power of. It's not that people are unfeeling. It shows the power of propaganda and the power of, again, this separation that it's not us, and I'm sure if that was us, we did it for a reason. Do you know what I mean? This sort of consensus trance that people fall into.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. It's a very clever and difficult situation.
Well, again, it goes to problem, reaction, solution. Again, the bigger picture of this is all about totalitarian tiptoe, and them taking their rights away. Because if you see a gang of people coming down the road and somebody says to you, look, I can save you, but you're going to have to give your rights away, you'll do it. So if people are in fear all the time, which is an energy and a vibration, a low energy vibration, and people are in fear and they're going, the little thing has gone from, serious to critical to, they have this level of danger. Yeah. And that changes all the time.
I mean, that's ridiculous, because what was the level at when the bomb actually went off? It's arbitrary. It's totally pointless. It's meaningless. It absolutely means nothing. As you say, it's just a little indicator to tell you how fearful to be. It's very interesting the way that you described that, because it sounded almost exactly like the Kurt Lewin concept of fluidity, which is a Tavistock principle, which is basically in order to keep a population easily controllable, easily malleable, keep them in a state of constant trauma by utilizing exterior weapons, so to speak, in order to basically create chaos in their life. So that they don't know what's happening, and eventually they'll go, well, I need some stability in my life, and they'll turn to an adult or an authority figure, so to speak. What he does is he reduces you. I don't mean that disrespectfully. I mean that because that's what he does. He reduces people to the state of a child. Yeah. That's the whole point of this fluidity. And when you are sort of in a diminished panic state, your reasoning capacity is reduced. Yeah. And the natural and clever thing to do in that often is to go to somebody that seemingly knows more about it than you. And that's how society is presented.
And that's the nanny state. They rely on the nanny state. Yeah. What are you going to do to protect me? And then they say, hey, I tell you what we'll do. We'll remove your rights. But we're doing it because it's all about protecting you. And they'll go, yeah, okay. Again, it goes to problem, reaction, solution, which is, as I say, it's their method. Right, we're going to go over to a few questions that our listeners have typed in on the chat room there. Steve?
Yeah, well, the first thing I want to say, and Neil, I'm sure you'll corroborate this as well, when people, and we mentioned about being kept in fear, some people probably go, no, we're not being kept in fear. Well, okay, every time you switch on the TV, you watch a news broadcast, there's elements there keeping you in fear. Every time you read the newspaper, there's elements there keeping you in fear.
I'll give you
go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt, but basically, when I was at work the other day, all the people on my team had all cancelled a holiday this year because they were concerned about terrorism. I was amazed, to be quite honest, but a couple of them were going to Christmas markets. Someone was going to possibly Turkey or somewhere like that, I forget. But basically, there was about 5 people, and they'd all cancelled holidays.
Yeah. You know what? The very same thing happened where I work as well. One of the girls there, she was supposed to be going off somewhere. They were toying with the idea, and subsequently, it just happened to be Manchester. And she said, "No, not doing that now." And this was, I think, over to see football, Manchester United football, and she said, "No, not happening now." But even my father-in-law, he's in his late 70s now, and he's been a Man United supporter from the time he was a wee nipper, and he got the chance to go and actually see a game, and there was tickets had become available, and he turned it down. He said no, and for that reason, he said that's another place off my list of places that I will go. And again, he's one of these people who he's programmed how to think by mainstream media, because he's an avid reader of 2 different newspapers and won't miss the 6 or the 9 o'clock news.
Well, at what point though does it become protecting your own safety turn into, to use a sort of a pointless phrase, letting the terrorists win? Do you know what I mean? You could stay safe you could ensure that you're never killed by a terrorist by committing suicide right now, and therefore, that would be our moral victory. But what's the point?
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, yeah, it makes perfect sense.
I can understand why people would be scared to into that position where, I don't want to go to this thing, I don't want to risk it and such like that. I think it's just a shame, isn't it?
Oh, it is, yeah, because some people will miss out on lifelong dreams, or probably the best holiday ever. Holidays that could either start a romance or reunite you. You don't know, and people they won't do it.
Do you want to get to the question?
And it's obviously, the problem is that basically it's very, very fresh in people's minds. We've literally just had an incident happen, and so obviously people's reactions are going to be quite different. And probably, even as early as sort of in a couple of weeks' time or whatever, people's opinions will change about these things, and they'll start doing stuff maybe. But
we'll see what develops.
It's effective propaganda. Okay, that's one thing that you can certainly say. Now, whoever is directing and whoever benefits from this propaganda, that's a completely different argument. But you cannot deny that by the very examples that we've just discussed, the propaganda, in inverted commas, is working.
It is. We have a question, Neil, from Chris, and Chris he's wondering, does Neil know if English is the only language used by the elite to control us? He says he's sure there are other languages used on other nations, but is there a universal language that is used to control us by subliminally accessing our subconscious in the same way that symbols do?
Not that I know of. I know that there's things like, this neurolinguistic programming by which, depending on how skillful you are and what scenario it's in, you can better manipulate people into, say, sale type scenarios or going along with you. You can, by skillful utilization of groupthink and clever backwards stories and stuff like that, trick people into a position. There's all sorts of word games like, when did you stop beating your wife? There's no answer that you can give to that means you've not beaten your wife. So I kind of get what you mean. And I assume that basically that's the same in everything. Do I know any specific examples? No, I'm afraid not. And I don't, I'm not really an expert on sort of, sonics or anything like that. But there's, obviously language can be used to trick people. That's how sales works.
Well, the one thing that we've talked about before on the show is spells and spelling and the words they use. And I mentioned last week, I mean, there's so many of them, but the likes of TV program with the ME at the end, if you split them two, you've program me. TV license, well, split that up, lie to your senses. Is there any that you have come across?
There's lots in advertising, like, this spurious rigor, which means like 17.6% improvement on last month. Well, good God, this product must be really good, because basically to know down to such a fine detail, this must be really, really scientific. That's called spurious rigor. What others are there? There's just the concept of making a vague expression that attaches nothing to it, like the best a man can get, or the drive of your life, or just do it. What do any of those phrases actually mean? They can mean a million things. They just have a sort of general positive sense that is attached. An unfinished claim is something like 4 out of 5 dentists who chew gum recommend that you chew Trident, and you go, well, wow, that must be really good, because basically, aside from the appeal to authority, the third party advocacy of, like, these are dentists, so obviously they know what they're talking about. 4 out of 5 of them have said that they think this product is beneficial for you. So you're going to go, wow, that's obviously really positive. But what you don't know, which will never be answered, is basically, who are these dentists? Why do they think that? What did you pay them? And the most important question that will never ever be asked is, what in God's name is so wrong with this gum that one of these dentists wanted nothing at all to do with it?
And what did he say about it?
Exactly.
He probably said the other 4 are raving mad lunatics.
Yeah, I mean, you can just use percentages and stuff like that. I mean, I was on a show, basically, I forget who it was with, but we were talking about percentages and the use of percentage as in, statistics, down lies to statistics. And they were saying, are statistics evil? Is the use of statistics an evil practice? I said, no, of course it's not. It's no more evil than the use of stitches. It's just something that is utilised to do it. It's down to you to be able to use those statistics, whether these are well presented statistics or badly presented statistics, in exactly the same way as language can be used. This isn't dilapidated, it's a handyman's dream, right? This isn't small, it's cozy. This isn't a violent neighbourhood, this is a vibrant, socially active neighbourhood. Something like that. Do you know what I mean? In the same way that you can use words, you can use anything else to try and manipulate people into being fooled, basically.
Well, I downloaded a program, a YouTube, and you can go to YouTube and see this. And it was a TV advert in the late 1940s about Camel cigarettes. Yeah. And I downloaded it, and of course they're talking about, we did a survey of all the doctors in America, and most of the doctors in America smoke Camel cigarettes, and you see them in the surgery having a cigarette, and they're going, and these are great for your throat. Now we will look back at that and think, how nutty was that? How mad is that? But this was put out in the late 1940s, and I show that to people. When they're really being kind of ignorant regarding information, I showed them that video, and I go, now, we have the same issue with Wi-Fi. But the problem is that you think it's safe because you've been told it's safe, and because the experts are coming out and saying it's safe. But we know that it's not safe. Now, and then when they see that, then sometimes they put 2 and 2 together, and they go, oh, I see where you're coming from.
Well, absolutely, and you could even point out to the incredible sort of nefarious activities of the tobacco lobby and tobacco industry that sort of I think went all the way up to murder in order to hide certain things from the general public, basically.
Yeah, definitely.
These are huge industries. If you don't want to play it, if you don't want to play the sort of nefarious sort of societal control sort of angle or whatever, just tell them to follow the money. Look at asbestos. Look at various. There's a dozen sort of examples of industry causing harm to people and covering it up
Pharmaceuticals.
in order to make money. Sorry?
Pharmaceuticals, chemo,
Bayer,
radiotherapy.
infecting haemophiliacs with the HIV virus. Yeah, charming. Like, exactly. This is outrageous stuff. Like, infected polio vaccines, etc., etc. Drugs that they know that don't work. Drugs that they know. Look at the crisis of opiate addiction in America at the minute. They knew what they were doing. They knew that they would get people addicted to their product. But it was a sensible, that's not in my view, in their view, marketing campaign, and it was the sensible financial decision. Okay, you want to get more of that product out, and again, this is you can train people to make that disconnect. It's not me. I'm just doing my job. Blah blah blah. I'm just doing this. I'm raising the price on this because it makes sound business sense, and I've got a wife and kids to feed, etc., etc., etc. You can convince people that what they're doing is perfectly okay.
Yeah, and that obviously goes on. We have questions for you, Neil. There, we'll just go off to him, Steve.
Yeah, you have a couple of books, Neil. Your thoughts are not your own. Can you just tell people how and why their thoughts are not their own?
Well, I mean, for all the reasons that we're talking about, not just. I mean, you can go from a sort of from a mind control perspective. There were many sort of facets to it. There was truth serums. There was drugs that made you impervious to interrogation. There was personal mind control of emotions and actions, and then there's propaganda and societal control. And the propaganda and societal control can drain right down through all the sort of major influential industries, be that the news media, the entertainment industries, the education system, the military system, and the parliamentary system, the film, television, and music industries, and all of these things can be utilised to shape opinion and to control society to a degree. There's examples in all of those industries whereby you can see a direct path of influence from the intelligence agencies right down to these sort of very sort of disparate things in order to present a specific message to the public, in order to get a specific reaction from the public, be that sort of support for military spending, be that support for a war or a candidate or a particular new pop starlet or whatever, and the messages that they convey. And a lot of the time, basically, people don't realise that there are nefarious reasons that these things are presented to them, or that there are hands behind the wheels of something as stupid as, say, the Transformers movie, right? Most people wouldn't sit there and go, oh, this is military propaganda. But it is, and the reason we know it's military propaganda is because the script was given the final look over by the military. It's had a direct liaison with probably the CIA and definitely the Department of Defense in order for it to get a lot of the sort of a lot of the military equipment that you see used in the film and the representations of the military that are seen in the film. And basically the rule is, overall, the experience has to be popularist for the military. It has to promote them in a very popular way and make them look sexy. So essentially something like Transformers is actually a recruiting tool for the military. Why is it a recruiting tool for the military? Well, obviously that could tie into sort of foreign policy, domestic policy, wars overseas. Why are there wars overseas? Fights over gas pipelines and oil, and creating tension in other countries so that they don't get the foothold, so that they don't become an economic competitor, that type of thing. So there's a lot of complicated things that go on, and that's why people's thoughts are not their own, because basically it is imperative that people don't really know what's going on and don't have a correct handle on the world in order these things can exist, that there can be incredible spending on military and murdering children across the world, and yet we can somehow be riled up to think that it's poor people or immigrants or people with no money or no facility to make an argument back to us. We could be convinced that they're powerful enough to basically affect our lives by people who are actually affecting our lives. So that is essentially how your thoughts can not be your own, because there are systems in place to ensure that you don't get the full picture in order that they can prosper.
What about video games? A lot of people, as you probably know, Neil, a lot of people, when they want their kids to just leave them alone because they need to do other things, they'll sit them in front of an Xbox or a PlayStation or whatever the console may be, and a lot of these kids are playing violent war games. What do you think is the psychology behind them? Is it A, just entertainment? Is it B, as you alluded to there, could be kind of a recruitment program for the military, or possibly C, to desensitize them to all the violence that is going to come on their radar?
Well, I think there's possibly a degree of all of those things, because, you know, it's not as straightforward as monkey see, monkey do. You can watch incredibly violent films, you can play incredibly violent games, and lo and behold, you won't go and shoot up a schoolyard or whatever. There is a degree of the desensitization but I think that's true sort of throughout society. I think a lot of people are desensitized. A lot of this is to do with the internet. Like, for example, it's far easier to get porn. Like, you know, the children nowadays will never know the heady thrill of having to go down by railway sidings in order to find magazines discarded by homeless people. You know, it's artisan crafts like that have been lost thanks to technology. But what can you
thanks
do?
for the tip. Okay, I'll be doing that tomorrow.
But what certainly is true, I mean, there is an argument that basically they use sort of PlayStation and that type of controller for drones and such like that, and in the training for drones and stuff like that. I'm not entirely sure if that's true. I've heard that's true. I've not seen it myself, so I couldn't absolutely 100% say. But I have heard that. And there are certainly computer games that have levels where you do sort of use either that sort of FLIR technology or drone type attacks on people that are very, very, true to what it would actually look like. And what certainly is true as well is that there are certain games, I'm not sure how many or how common this is, that basically had a sponsorship deal with weapons manufacturers. This was on a Charlie Brooker show. I have to say that because the last time I mentioned this on a radio show, someone got really cross and said, "That's not true." I saw it on a program about computer games. There was certainly this one particular game that the weapons were based exactly on the aspects that would be these weapons in real life. So essentially it was kind of like a virtual tryout of them. Kind of like, like Gran Turismo is in theory like a virtual tryout of these cars, I suppose. So there's that aspect of it. It's very difficult to say. What I think is very strange is the sort of, you're spending time with your friends, but you don't leave your own house. Like, you're on a headset playing the computer game together and stuff like that. That might just be because I'm old and so don't understand how brilliant it is. And to be fair, I've never actually tried it. But, I used to remember going and sort of hanging out with my mates to play computer games and stuff like that. So, whether this is a good thing, a bad thing, who knows?
Yeah, I think I remember as well. Yeah, you used to go down to the local arcade, which are mates and a handful of coins, and that's how you socialise. Well, that's how we played games anyway. Can you tell us, Neil, something about that? Well, some people may be aware of, and others may not. But the refresh rate on a TV screen, how can that be used?
Well, what that was basically, I don't know if this is true of new televisions like LCDs and plasmas. To be quite honest, it probably is. The concept was that basically the way that the TV sort of refreshed itself sort of had a hypnotic effect. And that is true, but what a lot of people basically don't quite understand, there's a bit of a misconception about this, which is to do with how that works, and also the concept of alpha waves. This is a brainwave pattern. Basically, a lot of people think that what happens is the television actually emits these rays, these alpha rays, and that's not true. What it is basically, in order to hypnotize people, you need something called eye fixation. So you don't necessarily need the flicker rate, but the flicker rate exacerbates it, so it makes it sort of come on quicker. Although, if we're honest, you only need about 2 seconds to hypnotize somebody, and then the rest is just deepening the trance. But you can actually hypnotize somebody just with an eye fixation. So you can also go into a hypnotic state. What a hypnotic state is where basically your brainwave activity slows down to an alpha level, which basically makes your subconscious more malleable. You sort of go into, it's like a daydream. You go into sort of autopilot, and what this means is that basically any interaction with your subconscious has no barrier. It just takes on information. It doesn't sort of vet it. It just takes it on, and it has no common sense, so to speak. It just sort of takes it on face value, which is why adverts are so nonsensical a lot of the time, because what happens is you basically get this eye fixation and the learnt behaviour, the sort of dogmatic behaviour of sitting and relaxing, and you fall into a trance state. This is why a lot of people find that they fall asleep in front of the television. And what this means is that messages that come from the television, be that advertising, be that political manifesto, be that messages absorbed from a drama or some sort of artistic expression, are absorbed into your subconscious, and you don't have the barrier to sort of repel that or to argue against it, and thereby you can absorb a lot of the messages, in inverted commas, that sort of come out of the television. This is why people sort of like, get addicted to sort of brands and think that they basically find themselves like knowing the theme tunes or the jingles from adverts or something like that, and you've never sat down and consciously learned it. It's gone into your subconscious and you've absorbed it. If you can have absorbed something like that, what other messages can you absorb?
Well,
and what
I was just going to say, Coca-Cola got caught in the 60s for doing this. When you used to go and watch the movie and then they had the intermission, they would be playing before the intermission subliminal messages through the movie, and people would be filing out through the intermission and buying Coca-Cola, and they were caught doing it, and I don't know whether they were fined, but they had to be stopped. And
that was an experiment. It wasn't that Coca-Cola were actually doing that. They did it as an experiment. It was a chap called James Vickery, and basically he announced that if you put a single frame of that in, that it increased the sales of Coca-Cola. Now, years later, he claimed that he just lied, he just falsified his data. So it's a bit of a misnomer, that one. But Harvard did an experiment with subliminal messages, and basically got 2 sets of people, sat them at computer terminals and told them to do these very simple maths tests. And unbeknownst to them, they were getting subliminal messages flashed up. One of them were getting positive words, and one of them were getting negative words. Now, the people that were getting negative words, there was a marked reduction in their ability to answer these questions. It took them far longer to do simple tasks and to perform simple tasks that they've been asked to do. So in that sense, negative subliminals have been proven in scientific experiments to have detrimental effects on performance.
Yeah. That is so true. Just something that you mentioned, Alan. I think Alan mentioned it in relation to symbols. There was something that I seen. My son was actually playing with it there about a year ago, Neil, and I'm guessing you've probably seen it too, because I know I had a look at it, and it was quite amazing to me. There was an app that he had on a tablet, and all this app was, it was companies, brand names, corporations. And you seen the picture, or even a portion of the picture, and then you had to type in the name of the company. Like, let's say, for argument's sake, there was half of a golden M, you instantly knew it was McDonald's, and there was hundreds, absolutely hundreds upon hundreds of these images, and I found myself, I played with it just to see what it was about, and I found myself, I was able to get a lot of these that I wouldn't have consciously known that I had known. But obviously, because of, when you're driving or a TV is on and these messages, as you say, there's no filter on your subconscious, so all this information is going in there. And it just sat there, and I was able to recall a lot of these brand names and slogans and all that I wouldn't have consciously known.
That's incredibly impressive in the same way that Pol Pot was very impressive. By which I mean that's ridiculously evil and yet genius at the same time, because that's selling it to kids and putting in the importance of brand identity, tying it in with learning, tying it in with a technology that they love, making it a game. That is incredibly sinister. Yeah. I didn't know that existed. That's hideous.
Yeah, no, it does. And again, something that we mentioned, about people's subconscious, that some people may be aware of, some people may not be aware of. But I think we did mention, I think Alan mentioned a couple of weeks ago, that, sometimes you could be in a room having a conversation with one person in a crowded room, all there is chatter going on in the background, and you're listening, you think you're just listening to the person who you're conversing with, but all of a sudden someone else across the room mentions your name and you tune in straight away, because subconsciously, obviously, all the chatter, it is all going into your mind, whether you know it or not, and then all of a sudden it's like a keyword or a trigger, your name is mentioned, and you just tune in straight away.
Yeah, I mean, certainly things like that can happen, and again, that's actually used by advertising companies. Basically, I don't know if they do it so much anymore. They probably do, and there's probably digital equivalents. I'm sure that there are digital equivalents, but basically they used to employ people to like stand outside record shops and stuff like that, and basically like have conversations about the new, I don't know, whoever, Cypress Hill record. Oh, have you heard this new record? It's amazing. Blah 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 blah. And they'd actually be paid. They're like a sort of street team or whatever to create this seemingly organic hype. I know the same thing happens, basically. That's how Justin Bieber got to be as big as he was, through, the networking of Scooter Braun. Basically emailed it to hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people and told them, email it to 10 friends. And all of a sudden you've got, viral hit on your hands.
Yeah, and this clickbait that's on YouTube, I have to say about this drives me nuts. And I'm seeing it more and more, and I just avoid it like the plague. What I do is I try and go to the source of the video rather than click, because what they're doing, for people who don't understand clickbait, is you get these people that are setting up YouTube accounts. They just want you to click on their YouTube video, which is not theirs. We've had our own YouTube videos stolen, and people have gone off and are making money from our YouTube video.
Yeah.
And that's all it is. Now, what will happen is they'll change the heading and they go, this happened, or this is going to happen, this happened the last week or the last month, whatever. And you'll find that it's something that was said like 2 or 3 years ago. But they do the heading in such a way that you think, oh, I'll click on that if that's new information. And it turns out it's not new information.
Yeah, there's an awful lot of that, and people not checking the dates, and basically the same story's being circulated again and again and again. I said, this is nonsense. This has been, disproven years ago and stuff like that. But they do. I mean, it's, again, same tactics in the mainstream media. We had the people. Oh, we know it's ISIS because they use TATP, which is basically boiled down bleach. It's like, that was debunked years ago. Like, okay, if you bother to check, it's not plausible to make an explosion of that size, right, safely with that type of explosion. They're more likely to kill themselves before they even get there. And nobody else, and kill themselves by basically blowing their guts out and bleeding to death, because it's not a plausible explosion. But that was touted out. That, by the way, is the reason that you still can't take liquids onto planes, because of the liquid explosives, which was, again, proven to be nonsense. But this ties back to what we were talking about at the beginning. in a way that we might have learned to check and to be suspicious of the information that is handed to us by the mainstream media. I don't think for whatever reason everyone has learned to be suspicious of everything that's presented to them in the so-called alternative media or in the sort of the medium of the internet, which is strange because basically the internet is basically 90% bullshit. Like so, but as you say, stories get passed around again and again and again and regenerated again and again and again, and it's bizarre.
Yeah, no, it definitely is. And again, people need to do the research, they need to do the filtering, they need to just keep checking and asking around, and even then keep an open mind to it, funny enough, because you just don't know whether it's real or not. And we're getting myself and Steve, we always say we're open-minded skeptics, and we're open-minded to anything that comes in, but we'll actually query it and we'll ask about it and we'll try and research it ourselves and check into it. But if you weren't really there, if something happens and you weren't really there, well then you can't really say for sure that really happened. And I know people will kind of look at you, especially when it comes to an attack or something, and people go, but these people are witnesses and everything else. And then it goes back into what we said earlier about stories embellished and everything else. Steve, you got more questions there for Neil?
Yeah, I'm just wondering, is there anything that we can do, like all this bombardment that's happens to us, to the subconscious, is there anything we can do to protect ourselves, maybe stop the effects? I mean, we do see a lot of people going around hooked up to MP3 players, iPhones, iPads, and they're listening to music. But I'm guessing like there's probably some nefarious stuff going on in music as well, Neil, or is there?
Well, I mean, yeah. Well, of course, there's messages, and by which I mean, trend setting, even on quite a subtle level in music, and dictating of fashion, dictating of stereotypes and the like. I mean, most people's understanding, particularly in the 90s, is probably still today of like what it's like to be to live in the rougher parts of Los Angeles is from Snoop Doggy Dogg record or something like that. Of course. Now, as far as everything else, basically, one of the things is you can learn the mechanisms. You can basically understand how advertising works. You can understand how political speech works. You can understand how media presentation works, and you can learn to sort of dissect a story to go, okay, I see what they're saying here, but if you actually look at the meat of the words, this is nonsense. This is an unfounded claim by an anonymous source. And then all of a sudden, they don't have the effect. If you can sort of, take the time to sort of just be aware that there are mechanisms that are out there to try and trick you, then you suddenly become stronger. Do you guys know what J-Trig is?
No. Well, I don't.
J-Trig is the Joint Threat Research Intelligence Group. It's a GCHQ program, okay? This is one of the sort of major things that I don't think a lot of people know about. It's about the manipulation of the internet. It was a group that basically, it exists to feed false information into the internet. It creates, fake gurus, it creates fake stories, it creates fake sock puppet accounts, and also sort of has government-paid trolls online who influence chat rooms and basically direct opinion. And what it was caught doing through sort of Edward Snowden and the like was directing this sort of attention against foreign terrorist cells and giving them nefarious information and basically setting them off on in the wrong path and creating dissension in the ranks and such like that in order to cause chaos. But what it strongly suggests in all this documentation is that they actually use this against anybody that is deemed to be an enemy of the state or an enemy of foreign policy or somebody that might be interesting to the intelligence services. And the suggestion basically is that a lot of this argument within the alternative research community, a lot of the stories, a lot of the seeming leads and theories and the like have actually been introduced, or certainly could have been introduced, in order to be red herrings, or in order to discredit, or in order to basically tie people up in knots and get them chasing their own tail. I mean, this was done certainly in the alternative media when this sort of existed in a sort of print and radio sort of sense. There's countless stories in the ufology field of false information being fed, and double agents and people coming in and spouting nonsense in order to discredit people and stuff like that. Why do we not think that this is happening within the online community?
Well, it's controlled opposition, isn't it? I mean,
absolutely.
They need the people in there to control it. If you control both sides of the chess game, and they send them in, and one of the things we were told, again, Thomas Williams, was that you'll see that the controlled opposition, a lot of them are the big hitters that we might know of out there.
Very possibly. I mean, I'll just give you another example. In 2014, it was shown that the most common posters on the very popular site Reddit, they all came from one particular building, which was Eglin Air Force Base. It's a major hub for Pentagon domestic manipulation programs, and basically it funded a series of research papers into how to establish majority views on social media forums, to influence conversation and to manipulate information. And basically, the Pentagon it's also off the back of this. It was discovered that they have a viral reset program to basically to kill stories before they even start. They can essentially just memory hold them or keep reducing the counter number on, say, YouTube or whatever, so that they don't get that sort of viral spread, or they seemingly don't get the same response that everybody else does. In the same way, they can, or in the opposite way, they can alter stories. They can boost them. They can make them seemingly, organically pop up in your inbox, so that you go, oh, wow, yeah, no, this is it. This is the lead to follow. This is the new and interesting way that we're going to investigate. And this is also tied into programs like SMISC, which is called the Social Media and Strategic Communications Act, or program, sorry. And this looked at how to influence behavior on social media. And this was a DARPA program. And basically the justification of these programs is to counter misinformation, which basically obviously means, going online to remove anything that could be deemed as anti-government sentiment, which opens up all sorts of very disturbing questions about popular theories and and whether they're there for a reason.
Can I just jump in there? One of the things I notice on Facebook, and I see people, either they're not aware of it or they're falling for it because the ego, one of them is check your IQ on Facebook. And of course, to people's ego, you kind of go, well, I want to check my IQ to see how big my IQ is, and it's all kind of got to do with, for me anyway, my what I think it is data mining. So
yeah, of course it is.
So all these things are there, and they'll get to know you as a person and what your IQ is, the things you like and everything else. Because when I was involved in the corporate world, some companies that you went to, you had to do isometric testing. And basically what you do is you go into a room, they give you a sheet, and there's all these words, and they'll say, which one applies to you the most? So you'd have 3 words, and you'd have a whole list of them, and you'd have 3 words, and you'd have to pick which. So there were different scenarios, and you'd have to tick the word which applies to you to most, depending on the situation they have on the actual list. And all this psychology and isometric testing is all got to do with finding what your personality is. Are you a team player? Are you a loner? What's your attitude like? Do you get angry at staff members, or are you calm? And that's what that is. It's just psychological profiling for the employee. Yeah. And I think it's a double-edged sword, in all honesty. And it's kind of frightening that they do that. And I know companies want to get the best employee, but then again, that's why you have 3 months probation when you go into a company, or sometimes 6 months, to see how they interact and see how they get on. Yeah. Because you can't mask. It's very hard to hold a mask up for that length of time.
Oh yeah, I mean, that's very sinister, that type of experiment. You would have thought that that's sort of what the the interview stage, and then, as you say, the probationary stage is 4. Depending on how much you wanted the job, I'd be tempted to just muck about with that test, to be quite honest. But you know, if they said these 3 words, what word appeals to you? You just say death. Death isn't written on that paper. All I see is death.
Yeah.
There you go. Test over.
Yeah, and job over too.
Well,
more than likely. Do you have more questions for Neil, Steve?
I just have a comment something that came to me as well when you were talking about that test there. Seemingly as well, there are pharmaceutical companies do also sponsor these kind of tests as well. People need to be aware of, where they will, and they target this at a lot of school children, teenagers, whereby because obviously teenagers, their bodies are changing, emotions are changing, moods are changing. We all know that, anyone who has teenagers. And in school, they talk a lot about depression, and they also have speakers in talking about teen suicides as well, because that's so much that's really happens a lot over here. So they have these pharmaceutical companies, and they sponsor these depression tests, and no matter what way you answer them, no matter what way you answer these tests, it will kind of give you allude to that you have some kind of a mental disorder and maybe suffering from depression. So that's just kind of something for the adults. You know, if your children are talking, saying that they're going to be doing these tests, be very, very aware.
Neil, what's the name of that? I'm sorry to jump in. What's the name? They have a name for this, where they do this, especially when you're on committee meetings and stuff. They'll only allow you to ask certain questions, and they bring you down the tunnel to exactly where they want you to be.
Oh, I mean, one of I think what you mean is basically they sort of butter you up. It's kind of like a love bombing thing. They'll sort of they'll take you on a journey where you come to a realization that basically, oh yeah, no, that's the answer. Yes, you're right. Well done. And did you notice that as we worked as a team, we all came to that answer together? And really, it's just using good old fashioned embarrassment techniques and appeals to authority and not wanting to look like an idiot in front of the rest of the class. I'm sure there is a proper name for it. I'm afraid it escapes me at the minute. There's, as I said, there's love bombing, which is essentially that basically when you get the right answer, everybody goes, hey, big round of applause for Neil. Everybody thinks he's great. And then the other one is that if you basically, you start going, oh, this is crap, this is bullshit, this isn't it, this is nonsense. They'll take you out the room and say, I'm glad that you've spotted this. I'm really sorry to have to put you through this. I'm glad you've noticed that. That shows that you're the best in class. Congratulations, well done. That's really the point of this. We want to sort of find people like you. You've got a future in this. I know this is easy to you. Can you just do me a favour? Just be quiet for the rest of the thing and just, put it up with. You've won. Congratulations. But just be quiet for the rest of the meeting. And it's just techniques to basically just get you to shut up and go along with the company line, to be quite honest. They're there to sort of impart this nonsense to you. So I'll
remember this method. I don't know, I forget the name, and after the show it'll come back to me. But basically what happens is you go into a council meeting and they will predetermine the questions that you can ask, but all them questions are not relevant to what you want to ask. So they're controlling you and herding you down a path where either way, whether you like it or you don't like it, it's exactly what they want. And there's a name for it.
Well, should they do that on mainstream TV as well? You know, a lot of the chat shows over here, before you go in, you're given a card and that's your question. Again, it's herding. It's sheep herding. That's what it is, really.
Yeah. We have about 7-8 minutes left, Neil. Give us the positives there. For people who are awake and aware, what should we watch out for? What should we be looking for?
Well, basically just the same thing. As always, whatever information comes for you, check the source and check why they might want to be giving you that information. I mean, it's not always nefarious, but even if it's not nefarious, it doesn't necessarily mean that the quality of the information is any good to you. Someone might really want to be sort of just be nice and well-meaningly tell you this, like, oh, have you heard this? This has happened, and blah, 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 blah. You don't, just take it with a pinch of salt. Just check everything for yourself, basically. As we were talking about earlier, people embellish, people sort of exaggerate. People take what different elements or aspects from a scenario that they believe to be the most salient or important points, and so opinion and subjectivity and objectivity all come into the impartation and the dissemination of information, and understand that basically there are ways to, people are surprisingly devious. It's like what you were talking about earlier, man. I thought you were going to we were talking about this depression thing with kids in schools and stuff like that. I thought what you were going to talk about is they'll do surveys with kids. So at least I'm going to be really simplistic here, but essentially they go, what's your greatest fear? What don't you like about your body? Blah, 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 blah. Thanks. Okay, that's very useful. And then they'll cater that in their advertising. Basically, they will use these sort of like buzzwords or these triggers that they know are going to really sort of like, oh God, I hate that. I feel awkward about getting naked in front of other people or whatever. They'll use that because that's a selling point. That's a way to merchandise and to market this to an audience, to a consumer. And they'll do exactly the same thing with children. Basically, they'll take parents in and basically say, what is it that would really, like, what can't you stand when your kids nag? Is it repeating the name of the toy? Is it this or whatever? Brilliant. Now we know that. Thanks. And they're not. This is called astroturfing. They're not a concerned parent group. They're, market research, and they take that back and go, oh, you know what really gets them to sort of give in to their children? When the child says the name of the toy over and over and over and over again. Well, okay, fine. We'll do an advert where it basically just says fidget spinners, fidget spinners, fidget spinners, or whatever. Like, I saw a kid doing it in the post office the other day, and she very nearly, if she'd have just kept her, like, metal, I think she'd have got one off her mum, because she was very, very close to snapping. But this, there are very clever people that look into lots of aspects of existence that most people don't even bother to think about, like how information gets to you, what information looks like, who's saying that information, what you think about that person. All of these things are a construct, essentially, and people need to realise that a lot of it's not as serious as it's all made out to be. It's all nonsense, all this. Like, who gives a shit if they've got a Mercedes or if, they've got this or whatever. It's all very silly and very just, come on. Like, the world is great and ludicrous at the same time. So, and the worst thing that people can do is be afraid, because that's where you're in a position where you don't have the sort of thinking capacity or the reasoning capacity to make sensible decisions, and it's also in a position whereby you might turn to authority figures or to comforting yourself through whatever means. And this is exactly what people want, people in power, people in control, because it makes you passive, it makes you concerned with unimportant things, it makes you feel bad about yourself, which none of these things you need to do. So that would be, I suppose, the one of the messages is to not be afraid. So examine the information, be aware that there are people out there that are going to lie to you all the time, basically because they've got their own ulterior motives. But don't be afraid of it, because it's like a magic trick. Once you realise, I'm sure it was terrifying the first time somebody said, look at this, I've pulled my thumb clean off my hand. And then when you realise that, no, you've just tucked it under your other thumb, it's not as scary anymore. Because once you understand the mechanism, you can do something about it. You can counter it. You have that information, and you can come at it from an educated standpoint, and go, okay, fair enough. It's not what it seemed to be. It's something far less troubling, or it's something just as troubling, but I have the wherewithal and the mechanism to deal with it because I have a better understanding of it.
I think people just have to be aware that we are manipulated most of the time. We are manipulated, whether it's through the media or whether it's through TV, it's advertising, PR and marketing. I mean, I've been involved in that side, the advertising, PR and marketing. And, they do the whole thing where, you buy product Y, and then in a year's time, you don't want product Y, you have to get product X, because this is much better than Y, and your neighbour has product X, so you should really get it as well. I mean, this is all part of the control and the marketing. I was watching 8 out of 10 Cats because it's a humour, and laughter's always good. And they actually had one of the questions was, how many people, here's statistics again, how many people feel they're influenced by advertising on TV? And the number was 19%. Now,
19%.
19%. Now,
and it's brilliantly working.
Well,
it's working so well that people don't even know it's working.
Well, I think 19% is quite low. I think if you did that 10 years ago or 20 years ago, that would probably be up at probably 40, 50%. So I do think people are waking up and cottoning on and saying we are being controlled and manipulated in a number of ways, and they're not falling for it,
And so did you say 19 as in just below 20?
Yes, 19.
Right, so 19% of people think that they're influenced. So basically, 81% of people think that advertising and television has no effect on them at all?
Yeah.
Then it's working. Because that's naive. That's so naive. Like, okay, to think that, like, no, I'm completely impervious to it. I guarantee they're watching that on a branded television or a branded laptop or something. And there's been something that's informed you to make that decision. Are you wearing completely brandless clothes? Have you decorated your house in what way? Where did you see that wallpaper? If you think that television advertising has got no effect on you at all, then it's won.
Well, we'll have to draw the line there, but I don't think I'm affected by advertising, but I think I have a tense nervous headache.
Well, let's just have a quick word from our sponsors.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Neil, thanks a lot for coming on. Much appreciated. Great information there. Got to do it, mind control. We just have to be aware that we are manipulated, whether it's through advertising, PR and marketing, or through the media and through the politicians. Don't believe what's been said. Go and check it out and sort it out. A big thank you for coming on, Neil. I'm going to pass you over to Steve. Steve's going to get all your contact details.
Yeah, too much information, too little time, Neil. We're going to have to do this again and not leave it so long. We do have a link to the website, Neil, neilsandersmindcontrol.com. We also have a link to the Twitter as well. We also have the Amazon link to the books. Is there any other links or information you want to throw out there?
Facebook. I don't usually use Twitter. The Twitter's there just because basically it's attached to the Facebook.
So you don't know how to use it either, like us?
No, I've no idea how it works.
Right, okay. So again, obviously, people just go to Facebook and type in Neil Sanders, they'll find you there.
Yes, please, yeah. Even though I've been decrying it for the last hour and 40 minutes.
Right, okay. Got a website or anything?
NeilSandersMindControl.com.
Brilliant. So, okay, great. Okay, Neil, stay with us there for a minute. We've just gone off to a musical break and we'll be back after this.
This is Open Your Mind Radio on OYMradio.com, UnitedWeStrike.com and PeoplesInternetRadio.com.
Okay, we're back. That was a little John Farnham and You're the Voice. Great lyrics to that song. That's from Alan's old 45 collection.
Brilliant. I do like that song. It's a good song, good uplifting song, and we are the voice. And, don't sit in silence, as they say. Great guest with Neil. I love talking about the old mind control psychology because we are manipulated in so many ways. And I've said this on the show before. I was watching a program a few years ago, and Cheryl Baker was presenting it. And she came out and introduced this guy and said he's a mind reader. And he put his hand in the air and he goes, I'm going to pick 5 people from the audience. I'm going to read their mind and then I'm going to tell them what they're like, So he puts his hand in the air, waves his hand. He goes, I've got them now. Them 5 people there. Got that. I'll be back in a few minutes. So he comes out in a few minutes' time and he gives them all A4 envelopes. And they all open up the envelope and they're all spread out in the audience. And they read the envelope and they're going, oh yeah, that's me. Yeah, no, that's me. Yeah, that's me. That's me. That's exactly me. And then he said, right, everybody swap your envelopes. And basically did 5 envelopes are all the same. The information was exactly the same. And then Cheryl Baker turned around and said, well, this guy is not such and such. He's James Randi, psychic investigator. And basically,
I love him.
Basically, if you know what triggers, what people want to hear about themselves, then basically that's what he did. And people could relate to what he put down because he knew exactly. He just did a generic profile and people, lapped it up because they said, oh yeah, that's me. So when you have a very good basis of psychology, you can actually do that. And I suppose that's all where these techniques and the stuff that Neil was talking about, and the PR, marketing, advertising, and the TV, the shows and all that. I mean, they invest so much money into this and the research of how to sell the products. And what manipulates people, what controls people, we know there's people out there who are struggling, but to the neighbours they don't want to let them know. So they'll be, mortgaged up to the hilt. They'll have credit cards coming out of their ears, because they want to have the new car, because they want people to see that we're successful, and it's just nutty. It's as a relative used to say, fur coat, no knickers, and it's sad where you have to feel that you have to compete with the Joneses. It's just sad. I really don't get it. I don't know. If you're in a position to afford it and you're buying it for yourself, that's fair enough. But if you're just doing it because you want to look good in front of the neighbours, I mean, I don't get that. Steve, I don't know. How's your new Rolls Royce anyway?
It's parked outside. I parked it beside your Bentley.
Okay.
Not too close, mind.
Yeah, it's fun and games. Anyway, guest that's going to be on next week is a lady that's never been on OYM before. Her name is Diane Brandon, and she's an intuitive counsellor since 1992. Now, she has a book out and stuff like that. I did get it in PDF form, but as we always say, we don't read PDF books because I spend enough time in front of the computer. I don't want to be sitting reading a book as well. I'd rather get a good book and bring it out and be able to read it, and that's the best way to do it.
Don't print it off, whatever you do.
Yeah, definitely. So if you are an author and you listen to this show and you have a book released, don't send a PDF. We won't be reading it. You have to send us a hard copy and we'll have a look at it. And that's really, so Diane's going to be on next week. So it'll be interesting to see what she's involved with. But go and check her out. Type in Diane Brandon, intuitive counsellor since 1992, and her books. I'm sure it's going to be very interesting.
An intuitive counsellor, is that anything like your woman that used to be on Star Trek?
Possibly.
Deanna Troi.
Diana Troy. Could be, yeah.
Yes.
You could be on the right thing
I think
there.
she was an empath.
Yeah, she was an empath, yeah. Now, the other thing is that we've had some great news during the week from OYM, and I'm not going to mention any names at this moment in time, but we have an offer from a listener to help us out to get the camera that we're looking for, because we have a celebrity guest who's approached us and said that they want to do an interview, and they've asked us to do it. And one of the things on our wish list on the website was to get a decent camera to do that. And this long-time listener has come on board, and they said they're going to help us out with that, which is fantastic. So more details next week. We'll have more details for you next week, and we'll keep you posted. But it's just fantastic. And I say the listeners that we have, fantastic. It's just, we're bowled over by it. We really are, by the generosity of some of the listeners. And we have a core group of long-term supporters who, for OYM. Now, we can count them on one hand, but they've been fantastic over the years, and you know who you are. So I'm not going to mention names, but you know who you are, and we do appreciate it. It's, their help has been tremendous to get OYM where it is. It's fantastic. But, for the listeners, general listeners who are listening in, if you can afford €5 or €10, then please, if you can, send it over to us, because it does all help to pay the bills and it keeps the wheels in motion. It really does. It's a big help. €5, €10, because I know there's probably listeners saying, well, I don't have a lot of money and stuff like that. It's not about that. €5, €10, it all helps to pay the bills and to just keep things going, keep the momentum going, and let us do the projects we can do, so we can video them, put them up, and show you what to do. Because this year, again, I'm not going to, we've been told about, 3 people have told us about September, October again. How many times over the years have we heard about this? But look, go and do the research and check it out, but you never know. But Steve, you're going to tell us about September anyway.
Apparently I am. Yes, I am. In September, we're going to have the Ireland Awakens Conference in conjunction with Miles Johnson's Basis project. It's going to take place in the Talbot Hotel in Stillorgan. According to Chris, that's the old Flamingos. Don't remember it myself, but it's going to be on the weekend of Friday, Saturday, Sunday, the 15th, 16th and 17th. That's in September. The 3-day event will comprise of 16 national and international speakers covering a wide range of subjects from UFOs, alien abductions, controlled remote viewing, sacred sites, the elite, mind control, ritual child abuse and many more. One of the main reasons for the conference is to get up-to-the-minute new information from an Irish perspective and get it out into the public domain. We're also very excited that, as well as Miles Johnson speaking in Ireland for the very first time, for the first time in many years, will be Kerry Cassidy from Project Camelot. Both myself and Alan will also be giving a little presentation at that as well.
Brilliant stuff. So, as usual, keep us posted. Let us know what's going on. We have the bank holiday next weekend. It's the UK bank holiday this weekend, but we have the Irish bank holiday next weekend. So we look forward to that. I'm sure we have a few things we'll be doing on that. Again, if you have any information or any news, email us in, let us know, or any links to videos, and we'll have a look at them. For myself, Alan James, take it easy, stay safe, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Okay, and for myself, it's been a great show. Lovely information there from Neil. As Neil said, just go on to the likes of YouTube and type in mind control. Even type in something as simple as how the supermarket controls you. There's a very good information on mind control in the supermarket, how they actually get you to purchase the products. It's very, very interesting. And most popular 2 items in the supermarket, bread and milk, but they're never together. Ever wonder why? Well, do check it out. From myself, Stephen George, we'll catch you again next week. Stay tuned, People's Internet Radio. Vin is going to be in the hot seat at 9 o'clock. We'll see you all again next week. Take care. Bye-bye.